Welcome to the Dear Doc podcast, where we will discuss the business of running a dental practice with a panel of experts. Now, your host, Dr. Christopher Hoffpower.
Hey guys, this is Doc Huffpower, and I'm coming to you again from my home studio here in Alvin, Texas. Today, I'm really excited to be able to present to you a new expert, and she's actually an expert in malpractice or expert in board complaints. And so she is an attorney. Her name is Michele Quattlebaum, and Michele is actually joining me today in the studio. Michele, how are you doing?
Doing good.
So I'm sure if you measured us, we don't actually have exactly 6 feet, but I'm going to lean this way. We'll be okay. So
he's not going to breathe on me.
I would never. So anyway, guys, we're going to talk about some of your Dear Doc letters and also about some general principles whenever it comes to fighting a board complaint, making sure that in the inevitability that you do get one, because I think it's fair to say almost every dentist at some point gets some complaint levered against them.
Absolutely. And it doesn't have anything to do with whether you're a great doctor. You've just got patients you can't please.
Absolutely. And there's just some human beings who suck at life. But
yes.
Aside from that, Michele, what would you say? Well, first of all, why don't you tell everyone a little bit about your qualifications, what you do, a little bit about your company, and just kind of share a little bit about yourself.
Oh, okay. Well, as Doc had said, I'm an attorney. I'm licensed here in Texas. I have tried lawsuits all over the country, but primarily here in Texas, all over Texas. I'm what some people would slangily call an insurance defense lawyer, but what that means, I'm a malpractice lawyer. I'm an old malpractice lawyer. We do a lot of board matters too, but I really enjoy risk management because I would much rather talk to you at this time.
Absolutely.
And give you warning, and not to scare you because, but to say, this is what you do and this is how you respond to something. So I don't see you on the other side.
Exactly.
And every night at 9 o'clock, you call me, am I going to lose my, house? And am I going to lose this? So that's kind of what I do. I've been licensed a long time. I've been doing this for, 38
1 or 2 years.
Yeah,
you're only 35, so it can't be that long, right?
I was a child prodigy.
That's right.
And but I do, I'm one of those, when I'm going to give you advice, it's going to be because that's what I see come across my desk. And I've had the pleasure of representing dentists for many years. I've tried cases with dentists in court, but we see a lot of board complaints. And that's one of the things we're going to talk about because
Absolutely.
It's not, like I said, I find using my treating doctors through board complaints because I meet them and enjoy meeting doctors and stuff, but you just can't please every patient, and the biggest thing is to kind of try to see that red flag and try to avoid, and especially if the complaint comes in, then we want to talk about what you do to minimize the fact that the board may
absolutely, and a lot of that stuff you've got to do before the problem ever happens. And
Exactly.
It's funny, as you were giving that little speech about what you'd like and when you'd like to talk to people.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because I kept hearing echoing in my mind the same speech that I tell a patient whenever they've got a large MOD. And I say, I really, you need to get this fixed right now, because if you don't get it fixed, it's going to become a crown. And if you don't get it fixed, then it's going to become a root canal and maybe an extraction. And then we're looking at an implant. And the thing is with all things in life, I think that we have more similarities than differences. And I think a lot of dentists, when they see a lawyer or they hear the word lawyer, there's some rather bad connotations that come up.
Oh, definitely. I'm that way too. I think, I got to talk to lawyers today.
Oh, no, you're a lawyer. I hate wait a minute, I can't say that, right?
No,
so there's reasons there's lawyer jokes and dentist jokes. There's no people out there.
Yeah.
So actually, you and I met under a similar circumstance, which I cannot reveal due to.
Oh, but it was because I'm
concerns.
sitting there doing a webinar and I'm playing with this tooth, thinking it's a crown loose, and it's not. It's my tooth off. My dentist, who I've been to for years and years, is out of town, and he took me on an emergency basis. So thank goodness.
Well, and since you've said that, can I you're the expert. Can I now say what she said?
Absolutely.
Okay. So she comes in and I'm working on her in my chair and she says the dreaded words, like right after you give her a treatment plan, she says the dreaded words. And you looked at me and you said, so Dr. Huffpower, I'm a lawyer. And I just thought about vomiting right there.
A malpractice
That's it. I'm
lawyer.
done. A malpractice lawyer.
Yeah.
And so what came next just kind of, I think just kind of cemented our relationship here and made me feel really good. She said, I just want you to know, you have the most thorough consent process I've ever seen. And I was like, I went from like, I'm going to die to, hey, this is going to be a good day. So the thing is and the reason I tell that story is because you're really the dentist advocate of lawyers.
Right.
And I just want people to kind of know that that's just kind of how you roll. You know, you're looking for, how do I keep the guy safe? And you're not looking for the gotcha.
Oh, exactly. Well, and plus I always joke that I'm like the worst person you want in your office because I'm like, when I walk in, I'm like, okay, this is wrong. Okay, that's wrong. He's doing this wrong. But that's because
I passed the test. I'm just telling you guys.
But I go in to say, hey, in my advice, I would change this.
Mm-hmm.
And so recently with the COVID stuff and going in to some doctor's office, they're being so careful about some things. And I'm like, look at all those magazines out in your waiting room. Those need to go in the trash, this kind of thing. But
well, almost the reception furniture almost needs to go in the trash.
Oh, I know.
I fog mine every day with hypochlorous, like Chloridol.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's going to be all spotty by the time this is over.
Exactly. And and we were just briefly talking because everybody talks about COVID right now.
Right.
Is that I would love to say it's not real because I'm kind of that, this is a political problem, but it is real. I get calls every day now. I mean, here we are in July and it's much different than it was in April. I have to listen to doctors at night crying, literally crying about their staff sick, they're sick, their patients. And you just can't be careful enough right now. And so, but it is real. And so take it real. And
I would go so far as to say, just in my humble opinion, it is very real, but it is also being politicized.
Oh,
so
big time.
All that aside, what we're here to talk about today is how to keep you guys out of trouble. And I'm actually going to start off the process because I had a disagreement with a friend of mine a couple of days ago, actually. He does something that I completely utterly disagree with. And I know you well enough to know that if I'm wrong, you're going to tell me I'm wrong. So, you know who you are. If she says I'm wrong, I'm keeping it in. So you can hear it nationally. Dr. Huffpower's wrong and I was right. So I have a buddy who likes to do these uniform consents. Mm-hmm. Okay. You go into his office, you're getting a filling, you're getting an implant, you're getting a crown, you're getting perio. There's one consent for the whole thing. And they just basically make a checkbox. I told him, I think that's utterly foolish because you can't be exact enough in that type of consent. If you do a crown consent, it should be a consent for crowns. You might want to say crowns and onlays, 3/4 crowns. Those are all pretty much the same type of procedure. But it's my contention that if you're doing an implant or an extraction, you need a completely separate consent because there are separate risks that need to be informed. What is your thought? I'm thinking probably your thought's going to be some combination of if you've got all that crap in there, it's okay. But what do you think?
Well, God, I was hoping I could say he was wrong. Okay. I'm so sorry. I was like, okay, good.
I like it better when you can't say I'm wrong. But
I know. Well, okay. Theoretically, what you said, if you put everything in there, it doesn't matter how much, but the chances your patient is actually going to read pages of garbage is because it's bad enough. You give them one, they're just, okay, whatever. Because I'm that way. I just sign whatever you put in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
But
she's a lawyer. You guys remember that, right? She's a lawyer.
Yeah, okay. So, but I would say not. And then besides, the board will bite you in the butt if you don't have a consent form, and not just a consent form, because it doesn't really make sense to me. But this is the board rules on every single tooth. So if you're going to doing a crown on, 13 or 24 or whatever, you would think the risks are the same, which they are, but you have to specifically put each separate tooth. So the same with fillings or anything. same particular tooth. So the one consent form
Mhm.
is, to me, you do need to have separate, and it's not that big a deal. You can have folders, these are for your implants, these are for your, your crowns, your whatever. And to give to the patient, I think that's a better idea,
Mhm.
because everything does have a separate risk. And but also, the longer the consent form, the more stuff for someone to read, the less
Absolutely.
likely they
Which
are
is the perfect
to see it.
segue to the other thing I'm right about and you're wrong about, which is
Okay.
that there is no such thing as true informed consent. And so the smaller the document is and the more succinct it is and the more bullet point of the risks it is, the more likely your patient actually reads it, and the more likely it'll be found that it's actually conceivable that the patient had true informed consent.
It is. There's probably a couple other points I'd make too, because informed consent is something we see all the time. And you guys, because your rules say you're supposed to do informed consent, we don't have as much problem defending you, because there is some kind of informed consent. Just because there is one does not mean you're not going to get sued. It does not mean you're going to win, because I told them they could die, because the
Right.
people on a jury don't read them either. Okay. So they were like, well, I didn't expect to die during this surgery. Okay. But
If the person who died is suing you, I just
You'd
got to
be
say
surprised.
they've got a good doctor somewhere. But
yes,
anyway,
they do. And so, but okay. So but what you are right. The more, because I'm kind of one of these, as a lawyer, I read things that my associates may draft, and I'm like, if I don't understand this, and I have a doctorate degree, what chance do my clients
absolutely.
or a judge know? They don't understand it either. So, so what you're saying is right. More succinct, clear. You're talking to the public, someone who doesn't know what all those fancy words mean and all. And I think that that's a great point. But also, it is, I think, good. Okay, what informed consent is exactly? Okay, real briefly, is if a patient says, if I come to you and he says, well, you need this, tooth gone, and well, that's one thing. But how do I if I say, okay, go ahead and take it out, how is that really good consent if I have no idea what the risks are versus the benefits? And so for me to have an informed decision, you need to tell me what the risks are. And then you can say, but you understood that this could be A, B, or C
Right.
if this happens. So, yeah, we we're in a society, because of lawyers, that you get these forms all the time, and you're thinking, what? And you see these, but the thing is you need to make it understandable, and it also chart notes. Discussed informed consent with patient. So even if you give them paperwork, you need to chart note it, and you're going to. And I know you say. You think, if I hear one more time, document. I make a lot of money because you don't document.
Yep.
Okay. So let's cut me out at the end by documenting.
Absolutely.
Okay. So document informed consent, discussed, and actually make sure they know. The other thing about informed consent is, let's have them sign it before you juice them with the sedation. Okay. That's the other thing is, I don't know. They had already sedated me. I don't know what I signed.
I have mine come in, and on my consent, it says, typically we have people do consents immediately prior to surgery. I understand that that is the case, and I am waiving that right because I understand that I will be sedated. And so I have them do it 24 hours in advance with that stipulation that they initial. Because that's the only thing I can think of, because it's supposed to be the same day, but it's also not supposed to be the same day they get sedated.
Well, that's the thing. And that's the argument, is that you need to do it as soon as close to the event. But I have had patients who have said, but I was sedated. Right. And it makes sense. I mean, you're all loopy and you think the world, and you're, whatever you remember. So again, how does somebody give an informed decision if they're drunk on whatever it is you gave them?
So what is your thought about the defensibility of having that consent signed the day previous? I know that the board says it should be the same day, but they really technically can't be, because the board also says that they can't be sedated.
Exactly. I think that what you're recommending
reasonable,
that I understand this, or you have them sign it and say this is prior to sedation, and then I don't know. I'm not the doctor, so I don't know how far in advance you have to sedate before something. So if they have to come in 30 minutes early to sign it before you start the sedation, then that's what they have to do.
All right. So that brings us to we've got all sorts of questions on these consents and also on notes. We could probably do an entire episode.
Oh yeah. And that's the thing, you invited me to do this, and I have an associate that works a lot on dental, and she's like, I want to do that too.
We're going to get
anyway. I was trying to pull some notes, just to some talking points if you want to talk about, but then I realized we could do this a bunch.
Oh, absolutely. Well, you and I have talked once or twice, so I can chat. So another instance where I had an argument with someone was auto notes, macros. I personally believe every dentist should use them. However, there should be a segment of every macro that is individual notes per that procedure, per that patient. But that blood pressure documentation, pulse documentation, procedure documentation with codes, anesthesia documentation for what type of anesthesia, what their ASA rating was, and how much anesthesia should all be in a macro for every single note that we do, and not just in a group note, but rather done by procedure. And so if I'm doing 2 crowns, I want to be able to have a group note that says I gave 6 carpules of anesthesia, 2 carpules were given on this side, 3 were given on this side, or whatever, or 4 were given on this side. That's probably overboard. What is your opinion on, first of all, having a different consent for anesthesia versus crowns, which I do? And what is your feeling on macro notes, good, bad, and the ugly? Because I feel like you're better having something, even if they go, well, this is a macro note, than having nothing.
Okay. So
there's 4 questions in that whole pile.
Yes. Separate anesthesia versus and sedation. The board they were on a tear. The Texas board, and I'm sure the other boards are. There were a couple incidents a couple years ago, with especially pediatrics.
Absolutely.
And so it became a political issue that, well, we're going to take it out on people, and particularly a couple of my clients that did not deserve it. And so we've been fighting them a lot. So you can't document sedation enough.
Yeah.
When you said, well, this might be overkill, there is no such thing as overkill when you document about sedation. And you need to put down exactly how much you gave, what you gave, reversal agents if you needed it, all of that.
Right. So
there is not, and so that is also important with weight and age and things like that, to have it. If you don't have all that documented in your chart, well, how did you determine what to do? Now, as far as anesthesia goes, but now kind of a pet peeve of mine is what you're talking about with macros and all, is because, again, on my end,
finally did something wrong.
Well, no, I agree, because, usually what I say about documentation, because I'm going to say document, but do what is good for you. Because some of us, I was dealing with a medical doctor yesterday who didn't even know what an audit trail was. He couldn't figure out a drop down box to push, because he was probably more closer to my age anyway. But
and we depend so heavily on our staff. The problem is that sometimes it's the staff that makes the mistake.
Exactly. Because people say, well, it was my assistant that did it. Well,
guess whose license she was working under?
Yes, and it's your fault and not their fault. But but what I usually will say is what works for you, because what I need is everything documented accurately, adequately, all the requirements. But if you can do it on a piece of paper, on just a blank piece of paper, more power to you. It takes more time. The chances that it's going to be accurate is slim to none.
Right.
it's because you're going to forget things. You're not going to have the time. So the macros and anything for if you have EHRs, which I guess most people do.
Well, they're supposed to as of 2014.
Yeah.
Right?
And so, well, they're supposed to.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay. So the supposed tos don't always happen. But anyway, when you do your macros, they have to be accurate. And just because they look pretty
Mhm.
and some of those elements are there, it doesn't mean they're right. And you have to make them right. And so, yes, if you have all those details in your macro, and that's what you need to sit there with, like a checklist.
Exactly.
These are the things. So, this is like your part of your compliance program, okay, that you are required to have, is you self-audit yourself. And, you take an afternoon and take your charts out. You take some cheat sheets of requirements from one of the zillion, documentation courses you've taken. And it says you have to do this, this, and this.
Mhm.
So you do that and you say, ooh, I missed this and this. You would much rather yourself audit you than Medicaid
Absolutely.
or the board or somebody else. Or, some carrier that wants $1 zillion back because you didn't properly document this and that. So what you do is you go through, like you were saying, and have these, whatever's going to save you more time, do it, but it's got to be accurate. And just because it says 6 carpals doesn't mean if you didn't give 6 carpals or you gave some additional or you didn't mark it down, then it becomes worse because not is it just absent, but it's wrong. And so
the question there remains to be, if it didn't get written down, did it happen?
Well, I hate that saying.
I know you do.
But I hear it all the time. And it's because,
I would go so far as to say that is a hot button issue for you. Because I said that to you before and you're just like,
I hate that. Well, it's because, okay, I ate yesterday. I'm sure I ate.
But do you remember what you ate?
No, and I didn't write it down. But so that's kind of stupid to say, well, if you didn't write it down, it didn't happen. Well, I ate, okay? So, but you can't prove you did it. And you could, and this, because they'll say, well, so doc, did you take Michelle's blood pressure? Well, well, I took it. Well, how do you know? Well, I take every patient's. Did you take Michelle's? But I take every patient. No. Did you take mine? So that's why you have to document these things. And it takes time. And you rely now more on your staff to do your note keeping, but then they're human beings too.
Absolutely.
And you've got them doing 20 other things. They've got 2 hands and they're not doing it. And guess whose fault it is?
Absolutely.
Yours. It is
so,
not their fault.
So the system I have in place is that my assistants take my notes, but I write macros for everything. And at the end of the day, I have an auditor who goes through on every single patient and makes sure that the notes are there and complete.
That's great.
And every one of the new things I've added, because I knew that they were suggesting this, but I didn't know it was a requirement yet. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to tell them this is ASA. You have to have ASA in your notes now. So if you don't have it, you have a problem. It doesn't matter if you are sedating a patient or not. ASA classification must be in your base notes. It's actually documented on the oh gosh, not workforce, but professional code, whatever the heck that thing is. 146 point something or other, right? So what are your thoughts on that? I mean, that's one of the things that people are, I think, very poorly trained in. Is documenting ASA.
I would agree. So, yeah.
And they're all over the map.
And, and so there's quite a few, I mean, so like I said, I hear so many people, I hear documentation all the time. It's because you don't do it. Okay. Or you don't do it right. And so it is good if you can take some kind of, course or,
maybe, hold on 1 second. Maybe we can get you guys to hold a course for TBOD.
That would be, yes. And I know, because I just talked with Kathleen this morning and she's like, I'm so jealous. I want to do that. So anyway.
We're going to have Kathleen on. We're going to do a dental refresher course on appropriate notes, what things must be included, and the pitfalls of including them incorrectly or discluding them.
Right. And, and there are a lot of, there's a lot of details that, that we see that aren't, well, that we don't see is really what it is. Cases we have or complaints we have that don't contain it. And, one of the things, because board complaints and kind of shifting a little bit when they come in, and the board will tell you, if they have a complaint that you did something that's a violation of the standard of care, or there's an injury allegation or an income, but if they can find a documentation error, you're going to get hit on the documentation error because it's easy. It's just right there. It's not there. You didn't take a blood pressure.
And the board wants to be seen as having done something.
Exactly.
Guys. So let's talk about what to expect when you're expecting. Well, they should have a book like that for getting a board complaint, right? So, one of the things that I think a lot of people don't understand. Well, first of all, and you and I have talked about this, if you're not a member of the TDA, become a member of the TDA, because there is nothing better than judicial review rather than a board complaint. You get a chance to get your shit straight, and it doesn't go to the record.
Exactly. And that's the thing. And, but I get a lot of blowback from doctors not wanting to do that. And I'm like, you don't want, because now the board, I think, has become a little kinder and gentler recently.
Right. They were much more harsh in the past.
No. It was bad. For several years, it was just bad. I mean, you went in there and I'm just like, something's going to happen to you. So you just well to understand it, because they wanted to give money back. I mean, that was their big deal, was you're going to have to, you go in there, you didn't take a blood pressure, well, you're going to have to refund them the $20,000 you did. They don't have any complaints, but you didn't do a blood pressure. And so this, ridiculous. It was for several years, it was like, but it's not like that. I mean, I think they've been doing a very thoughtful and more review. Not that I always agree, but it has been much different in the last several years. But the thing that I see that gets frustrating, and, I'm a lawyer, so of course I'm going to say you need to consult a lawyer, but don't call him and say, oh, I got this board complaint, what do I do? Because
I got you guys. No, don't call me.
But, or whoever, your buddy next door or something. But what I see that happens is that y'all answer yourself, or you don't answer. You send your records in and you don't do any good explanation. The problem is when you first get a complaint anyway, because you're like this.
Oh, you're on mental overload.
This white noise goes off in your head and you're like, that lousy, SOB. I did everything I could for that patient. They were so hard to get along with. I never charged them. She's been back in here 10 times.
First mistake.
Yeah. All of this, and I never, and then, and now she's making a complaint, or he's making a complaint. And I've literally sat in there and thought, okay, the blue aliens are coming down. This person's hearing noises. And then the board's like, man, let's fine her $10,000. I'm like, whoa, I thought this lady was nuts. But anyway, the problem you do that I see, the first thing is you get this complaint and you deal with it yourself, or you forget to deal with it, or you just halfway, do it. And you've just started out the wrong way. Okay. What they do, especially in Texas, and I don't know if you get out of, other states here. So, but they go through like an investigation stage at first. It can end there. Much better to end there.
Right.
A lot of times it doesn't, it goes on to more of a.
If you are a member of the TDA, you have the right to peer review. Be a member of the TDA, because that's the step one that you don't want to skip.
Okay. Yeah. And some of those don't, some go there, but some don't. Right. And if they've already made a board complaint, you don't go to the TDA. So, it's already there at the board. And this is my drug of choice. Sorry. It's my bad thing.
You just realized that got on camera, did you?
Yeah, I know. I was like, okay. Anyway, it's morning. I don't drink coffee. Sorry. Anyway, but let's say it's a board complaint and you get a greetings letter from the board, and okay, you have most likely, or you should have malpractice insurance. Okay. It's malpractice insurance. And you're thinking, well, this is a board complaint. It's not malpractice. Call your malpractice carrier. I got a board complaint. Help me. And they will retain you a lawyer from wherever Timbuktu you live to help, or Austin, it doesn't matter, wherever, Houston, whoever. And they to help you and can help you walk through the steps so you don't step in it initially. And you started out, always think you need to start out with the best foot forward to deal with these investigators. So it just sets it up in a better situation. A lot of times don't get the call until they've already proposed sanctions or disciplinary actions. And then it's like putting Humpty Dumpty back together again. So it's better to start out. Don't forget, like I said, don't forget, if you've got malpractice insurance, I assume most every policy covers your attorney's fees for a board matter.
But the problem is that most dentists think about it this way. They think, well, if I go to my malpractice insurance, my premiums are going to go up. And guys, the reason you have the malpractice insurance is to protect you exactly in this situation.
And not only that, it's a board mat. And so a lot of times, just because it's an ancillary type, it's not really a claim, a lawsuit. So it won't, unless you're a frequent flyer. And I've got several frequent flyer, what we call frequent flyer, meaning multiple cases. And, but we can walk it through instead of, like I said, when I get it and it's already at a proposed order, I've literally gotten as many as 36 patients that were bad. We want, please FedEx us back your license. And we've been able to walk it back. But it would have helped to have walked it back initially, where we explained to them what the problem was and why, that there was a flood and that all the records were destroyed and this and that. And, but it helps instead of getting there. Don't go by yourself because it's not a friendly venue. I don't care how reasonable they are, and I get along well with these doctors. Their job is not to help you. It is to protect the public. And it will feel like an inquisition because they're going to say, why'd you do this? Why'd you do that? What were you really using that cotton roll there? What kind of dam? Did you not use a dam? Well, no, why would I use a dam? I mean,
nobody does that.
The fact that they had to swallow that crown and they had to have their lung removed and things like that. Call your carrier, utilize your coverage. And I can't say something negative isn't going to affect on your record, but trust me, it's going to negatively affect you if you don't get help.
Right. And
that will be reported to the data bank. The board reports, all board actions get reported to the data bank. So it will affect you. It's going to be there on your record. And then your insurance is going to go up anyway, because when you change, you're going to have board actions against you. Plus you'll have board actions. And we can at least reduce what's going to happen to you. And like I said, I've walked back several revocations where we've ended up just still with the disciplinary action. Right. I mean, it doesn't just go magically away. But yeah.
So let's talk. So my wife is a veterinarian. And so I know that in order to sue a professional, you have to have a professional who will, or at least in veterinary, who will testify that what the first professional did was against professional standards. Is that true in dentistry?
Oh, absolutely. And it is.
But also, what's the difference? See, the thing is, I don't want people to have a false sense of security if they hear that, because a board complaint is different than a criminal or a civil matter, right? Or is a board complaint a civil?
A board complaint, well, it's civil.
Okay.
But it's not criminal.
Right.
But it is, it's more what we would call administrative.
Right.
Versus
so when do they
litigation.
need a professional to sue you? And when can they just get board action
to
give you? You see what I'm saying? Because those are a different thing. And I think a lot of people think they're the same.
No, it's
completely different. Walk us through the whole process.
Okay.
And can you be put into double jeopardy for a criminal suit versus a board complaint?
Sure. That's yeah. Okay. And
you see where I'm leading there?
Okay. So with the board complaints, what happens is crazy woman hearing those voices because you put some metal in her mouth. she files a board complaint because she's sure, and a lot of them self-diagnose, because somebody told them they didn't need this or whatever. That's all they have to do to file a board complaint. Once that complaint is there, it's there. Even if they complain and then they're like, oh, I didn't really mean it. It's there and they don't have to dismiss it. The patient can beg them to dismiss it. It doesn't matter, So you don't have to have that. Now the board they have standard of care doctors that you're a peer review doctors that you're not supposed to really know who they are. And maybe some of them are listening right now. And
they're listening. I know who they are.
And so they see it and then they give the board an opinion. I frequently disagree. And so with theirs, but everybody's opinions, with dentists.
Do you ever feel like perhaps the people who are the professional standards police are the people who hate all the other dentists and actually just kind of hate themselves and want revenge? Do you ever feel that way? You don't have to answer. You don't have to answer.
Okay. But no, and I know some. I mean, but I also but I know some that do this, and I love them. I mean, they're friends. They're
by and large the ones I've met. They're real uptight, and they are I can't believe you didn't use a rubber dam for that full mouth restoration kind of people that have never actually done it, but they have notions about what should be done.
It depends. I mean, I know a lot of just excellent ones.
That's good.
But they are usually what I would call more ivory tower doctors that really aren't, but it depends. They send some. Now, but that's so to start the board matter, it's not, the patient doesn't have to have another professional. The board will go, especially if it's some kind of standard of care, they'll send it to a review doctor. But yet the board members, when you get there, they use their own expertise, whether they're qualified or not, to give their opinions. Now, as far as criminal go, because now the one thing is, and then we still have lawsuits over here. The burden of proof on a lawsuit's one thing, but over with the board, it's really what do those people on that committee think, and that's there is no standard. I mean, there is no burden of proof. Okay, it's just whatever they think, and so. With that, now you can have an expert report if you want. At the initial stages, you don't get too involved with that. If they come back and they say, these are the things that we recommend to resolve this board complaint, A, B, C, you have to do this, 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 and this. And from a defense standpoint, you go, no, we don't agree. Then I would take it, the defense attorney would take it to what's called SOA, the State Office of Administrative Hearings. All the boards, whether medical, podiatry, chiropractic, whatever, go to SOA. And they have a judge, an administrative law judge. I love it there. I mean, the ones I've ever had are very competent, and it's like a little mini trial. And I've had phenomenal results. And with these judges, and then it's more like a trial. You bring witnesses and experts, and they testify, and then the judge gives an opinion, and hopefully that resolves it. Although, the board can still argue about it. So that's all civil, and it's administrative. It's not litigation like if you get a malpractice suit. Now, criminal, it would depend on the allegations. So say it's a sexual thing, and it would be administrative because it's a no-no. Okay. Bad no-no. Okay. Really bad no-no. But if it's something that would rise to more of a criminal action, they would then refer it to the district attorney's office. And then it becomes criminal. They would do that. The unauthorized practice of dentistry, a lot
which the board has no authority over
Well, because
they're not dentists.
they're not dentists, exactly. And that's what's bad. If you have somebody in your office and they aren't properly licensed or something, it's not the person without the license that gets in problem.
Your
It's you.
problem.
And I used to say, and I do a lot of chiropractic too, and so it's a little more prevalent. I see that problems with licensing because what y'all do is, but people scam that a lot. I've talked to board investigators that say, I stay more busy on no license. And I'm like, you mean because they didn't pay their due, they didn't pay.
Nope, just never had one.
No, never went to school.
A lot of them though are dentists in other countries from what I understand. They come over here
and they
treat ethnic populations.
And so, but it's so weird with license. And I mean, like I have heard, I can't tell you how many times that, I have two different locations, and my associate at the other location, I just found out he doesn't have a license in the last 4 years. And I'm like, that's a lot of money you're gonna have to refund. And or this or that, things like that. And then, or you go over, so Thursday's slow day here. And so you go, but there's a clinic in Pearland that needs some assistance. So I'm gonna go over to there, help them out. It is, if a doctor over in that clinic doesn't have a license, you're going to get in trouble.
Yep.
Because you have the license. So I used to say, look at their license, touch it, feel it, love on it. But now I have to say, and call the board and say, is this a valid license? Because
and they don't even have to do that. All they have to do, because I know this because of TVOD, because we check licenses. All you have to do is go to the board, or not even the board website. It's the TDBSE website, and you just put in their license number, and it'll pop up their name, pop up their location, and if anything doesn't match, then call.
Yes, and because I actually had a situation where.
Same name, different license?
No, not even that. But they weren't. The board was investigating a complaint and was about to close it, and then they said, "Did another doctor in your office treat this patient too?" And they said, "Oh yeah, Dr. Tom did." And so they said, "We don't have a license for them," but said, "It's on my wall. I've got it posted." 7 years. It was forgery.
That's a lot of money.
It was a forgery for 7 years. And so now I'm touch it, feel it, love on it, check it out. Okay. So, and, but anyway, we digressed. To go back. So criminal, there could be things you do or shouldn't do that could be referred for a criminal action.
Like that chick who pulled all of her boyfriend's teeth.
Yeah. Did
that make you cringe when you saw that, or did it make you smile a little bit inside?
Yeah, you usually smile. It's kind of like they deserved it. So usually if they do something like that, right, they deserve it.
But that would be a criminal case and a malpractice case as well.
Yeah, but whatever. And but then the difference too. Okay, so then you go to the malpractice arena. And what you were talking about with having an expert in Texas and is in most states, they're supposed to give you notice before they sue you. And dentistry is a healthcare provider under Chapter 74, Civil Practice and Remedies Code. But anyway, Chapter 74. And in that, there's a mandatory black and white rule that after a patient files a lawsuit, they must produce an expert report from a qualified expert to say what the standard of care is and that you violated the standard of care and that violation caused an injury.
Gotcha.
So
that's a lot of levels of proof before they can move on.
It's a very difficult level of proof. And actually, it is one of the ways we get so many malpractice cases against dentists dismissed. Not because y'all don't squeal on each other, because I have heard, and y'all aren't the only profession.
I've met you people.
I know. I believe this for my other, because like I said, I do some chiropractic and they have the same problem. I've heard if the dentist had a firing squad, it would be a circle and we'd be facing inward.
Yep.
And which is not, you shouldn't do.
Veterinarians don't do that to each other. MDs don't do that to each other either.
No.
There's a code there.
There's, typically in the medical, you see doctors that are off, over on the East Coast, and they do, and they don't have to look at these doctors. They don't see them. There are a couple specialties in medical. You're just out of luck trying to find an expert. No, there's some, but there's not a lot. But there seems to be plenty dentists available that'll for the
right price.
For the price will testify against you. And but the thing that is really a benefit, and the law hasn't changed unless they want to do that later, is because it's a steadfast. You have to have this expert report. It's 120 days after the answer is filed. That sounds like thunder. But a lot of dentistry, even though it seems like y'all are very expensive sometimes to us patients, but is a lot of it goes into small claims court. The patients have less than $10,000 of problem, and instead of going to a lawyer, they have to pay 40% to. They will file a small claims court. They don't get their expert. And the rule applies in small claims court too. The judges hate dismissing it. It is the law. Now, I've had a few say, well, I know it's the law and I know it applies, but I'm just not going to do it because it doesn't seem right. It's like,
right. Well, guess what? Now we're going to have a bar hearing for you, buddy.
Well, I mean, we get, I would say 90-something% of those cases dismissed. Ultimately, the biggest risk is it gets to trial before the 120 days.
Right.
In small claims court. So right now I've got 2 in the waiting, but COVID came up and we can't even get a hearing. So, ever in our lifetime again, I don't think. But
that
anyway,
works. So what you should do is if you have a customer who's upset, or a patient who's upset, I should say, you should say, oh yeah, buddy, well, take me to small claims court. I dare you.
But I keep waiting for somehow the legislature to change that and say it doesn't apply to small claims court. But because theoretically, it is a little unfair that the patient goes to small claims because they don't want to spend all the money that it costs for litigation.
Well, it's
and
unfair,
malpractice cases
it's unfair that they can leave us Google reviews that we can't respond to.
Exactly. I saw that on your thing the other day that somebody's getting a bunch. And that's, let me tell you.
So so that you guys know, if there is ever anything that I think Michelle might want to talk on, I send them to her, and she pulls her, you can't see the side patch over, she just pulls her hair out.
I know. I'm like, I said, oh, you need to tell them this. But anyway.
Oh, goodness, I remember there was one. You called me up. I sent it to you, and you called me, and you said, tell this person this. They're going to be in trouble.
A real big problem.
I don't know what he
I can't even remember the question. I just remember, this guy's got a problem.
I had never seen you freak out like that before, so I called
him. And I went, ooh, somebody needs to tell him. But so anyway, that they do get dismissed more in small claims court. That doesn't mean, oh, I'm just going to screw up everybody, and they're not, because something could happen. But what you did bring up is a problem. Is I did have a small claims court case, and it did get dismissed and a lawsuit, and it wasn't actually my client. He had a temporary doc come in, and it was the temporary doc that they were complaining about, but the owner of the clinic was being sued. We got it dismissed.
They left a bunch of reviews.
Oh my God. It was an older lady, and her kids needed to take a chill pill and a nice pill. And they just looked at me and they said, in this day and time, I can't believe y'all would have this attitude. And, I mean, it's my duty to get it dismissed if I can get it dismissed.
Absolutely.
And, it was brutal. The social media blitz that they put on and accusing my client, who had never touched the patient, of doing all this stuff. And
he can't say anything.
Exactly.
There needs to be some legislative updates to allow us to do something about it.
Well, I mean, in a way, and finally he just called and said, just make this stop. And we ended up paying her anyway after we won.
Did they remove the reviews?
To stop it.
So did they remove the reviews then?
Yeah.
Could you countersue at that point and bring them to court for blackmail and
No.
racketeering?
It would be nice, but
Yeah,
no.
it would.
But you
You
have
should be able to.
freedom. There is that. If you haven't heard on TV, there's a freedom of speechy thing.
Freedom of speech.
They way overdo that. But but yeah, that's the thing is social media has become worse than the courts. And,
Absolutely.
and I am
well, it is the court. It's the court of public opinion.
it is. And it's, you guys are big on, advertise. It's not as much, it is advertising, but it's not. Before I come, I'm going to Google you.
Right.
I'm going to look at your website or at least you pull it up. And if your Google reviews or your Google Map reviews or your Yelp's like asshole, da, 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 da. Or, but my favorite is you say, oh, well, the doctor's great, but that front desk is horrible. Right. And, you're going to lose. So it doesn't matter how much, how great you are, you've just lost business. And that happens. And that's more, this can be more dangerous.
I'm actually about to get a bad review. I know because I refused service to a potential patient the other day. And this is actually from something you told me once. I believe I may be quoting you exactly. You said the best way to avoid a board complaint is to identify trouble patients before you treat them and don't take them on, and don't be an asshole.
Right.
So I've tried to not be an asshole. I don't know if I'm capable, but I do try. But this lady came in and she was required to fill out our new patient paperwork to become a patient. And so she began filling it out and she threw the pen down. She said, I'm not signing this financial arrangement. And I said, but ma'am, what's the problem? Oh, well, it says that I'll have to pay a down payment if I make an appointment for anything over $500. And I said, yes, ma'am, that's our policy. We just want you to be aware of it before you become a patient. Well, I'm not signing it until I need to. And I said, ma'am, you need to sign it today if you'd like to become a patient. That's ridiculous. I said, I'm very sorry that we can't treat you. May I suggest some other dentists in the area? And she stormed off. And I know she's going to leave me a bad review. And I'm going to say, ma'am, you're not a patient of record. I suggest you remove this before I report exactly what your behavior in my office was to everyone who can see this review. Yeah. Because I'm not held by HIPAA in this scan.
Well, it is a big weapon they can use against you. I mean, a big weapon. Because we are in COVID. I don't know how long this stays up, and we would love it to be gone tomorrow. But I had a doctor call me the other night, and it's like, I have a patient who is just throwing a hissy about wearing a mask into my office. And what do I do? And I said,
Yep.
I didn't say this, but, if you want
Stop
to
scheduling
say no, tell her, if you want to tell her, okay, you don't have to, but I've had doctors who've done that. And then the patient literally called 2 days later and said, oh, by the way, I was positive.
They had a test. See, that's the thing that just gets me, because the fastest test there is the Abbott, and that's like a 15 minute, right?
They'd already taken the test. and I was like, but anyway, so he says, I said, he goes, can I refuse her? I'm like, absolutely. I mean, the city he's in requires it. He's mandated, not by state right now, mandate. It's not really law, but mandate that you aren't allowed to bring people into your business. And it's
Absolutely.
A health and safety thing for your staff.
And she will flame you on the internet,
right?
But that might actually be good.
Well, and this lady, oh my God. So then he did, I said, let me know what you did. So he, just kind of texted me and said, hey, I told her not to come in, or I told her she had to wear a mask and she didn't have to wear, whatever. And she said, no, I won't come. He said, okay. Well, then he sent me a few days later a Twitter thing. I mean, he sent a copy. He says, check this out. And it was this woman screaming and throwing this hissy fit.
I've seen that. I think every single
page. A million views on Twitter. It was his patient.
Oh my God, yes. You kidding me? That's fantastic.
It was his
You heard
patient.
It here, guys. We know who the dentist was.
Oh, it wasn't a dentist. Well, it wasn't, but it wasn't about office? Him. It was about some woman made a comment to her. And right. I said, holy cow, did she get you too? And he goes, no. The grocery store, a restaurant. He goes, so far, my name hasn't been mentioned. He goes, but she's now gotten 1 million views on Twitter. And that was his patient that he called me about. And I'm like, holy cow.
Was her name Karen?
Yeah, probably. And but that was I went and picked up something to eat the other day, and the girl at the cashier said, "You should have been here a few minutes ago. We had a Karen in here." And it was this woman came in and she said, you gotta wear your mask to the table. It's 6 foot, okay? It's not a big deal. We're in Alvin, come in, but you gotta wear the mask in. And she threw such a fit and threatened. She said, if you had more stuff in here, I'd break all this stuff apart. And of course,
really public threats in Alvin.
Well, I know. Well, see, and we live in Alvin. It's a little bit different. And the waitress said, well, you know what? I won't call 911 on you. I'm going to take care of it myself.
Good
if
girl.
You do.
Good girl. That's an Alvin girl right there.
Yeah,
I'll tell you,
take care of it.
A lot of people don't realize, okay, so when I talk about my small town of Alvin, and I'm not kidding, they're very traditional. To the extent that if you curse in a business, you can be arrested. I kid you not. That's because you have a potty mouth.
I have a potty mouth. I went to an all-girls school. There's a problem. Okay, so, but anyway, but with lawsuit, that's what there's different burdens of proof that each have, and it's just at the board level. It's a very loose burden, and that you can disagree a lot. So you just kind of have to have help navigating. And the rules, you miss deadlines, you do stuff, and it can be irreversible, and it goes on your record. Okay. So just take advantage if you have an insurance policy, and you should, to utilize it. You've paid for it. And the money it will cost you in a fine or extra fines or reimbursements will pay your premium for a couple years.
That's a pittance. It really is.
And it will pay. And especially if you want to hire a lawyer for what it's going to cost you for that one thing. And, and people say, well, they go to seminars and they say, well, just save that money on the premium. And then you'll have it if you ever need it, and you might not ever. And I mean, some doctors don't, but some do. And if it's a malpractice case, I've had cases which are substantial. Again, swallowing a crown, having to have a lung removed, swallowing a crown, dying, Ludwig's angina, suits, things that there can be lots of money. I have one that is, I can't even tell you how much attorney's fees are right now because they're being unreasonable about an infection. And so it's just take advantage of it. Don't be afraid your premium is going to go up a little bit. Unless you've done something horrendous, they're not going to cancel you usually. If you do, you got the wrong insurance company.
That's my next question, and what I want you to end on.
Okay.
All right.
He's like,
so,
hurry up. You're talking about
no, actually, we got to 1 hour and 2 minutes, and I promised you it was going to be 1 hour.
Okay.
So the rest of this is going to have to go on our second, third, fourth, and fifth podcast, right? Speaking of which, guys, if you've enjoyed this podcast today and you'd like to hear a little bit more from Michele or from her associate,
Kathleen,
go ahead and drop a like down there and put down some topics you'd like to see covered, particularly whenever it comes to
if I
malpractice.
Could or I can suggest some. We can talk about things like texting with patients and or a lot of social media communications, because
you've got to copy that and put that or screenshot it and put it in the record.
Right. And then, absolutely. And that people don't do that. And, or communicating, on social media with patients and what to watch for in your websites and this, not just documentation things, but there are so many different, your HIPAA, it never hurts. Of course, HIPAA's a required training course anyway, but to talk about some of those things that we could talk about.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of communication things with patients that would avoid potential problems. And that's my deal. Let's avoid potential problems. Let's not just get scary.
Absolutely.
And then we can talk more at a later date about the types of suits we see and the types of complaints, and the things that that really will get you some in trouble, and then how to deal with that psycho patient that you want to get rid of, because you don't have to be abused. I mean, that's
I
the
agree.
thing. So there are steps to take, and so we can talk about things like that.
That sounds like some great programs.
Mhm.
So before we go, I'd like you to tell everybody about your law firm, where you work.
Oh,
And
okay.
she,
Sure.
by the way, she's not a sponsor of the program
No.
or of TBOD, so I do not have any financial disclosures.
And so, no. Okay, I'm with a firm called Sprott, Newsom, Quattlebaum, and Messenger. Some of you may know Joel Sprott. He does a lot of dentistry, defense work too. Joel and I do. I joined the firm several years ago, but I'd known Joel for years, and it was kind of weird. We both, because we ran into each other a lot, and but he does a lot of dentistry. I would say 75 or 80% of our firm does malpractice defense, either from all specialties. And I do medical mal, I do a lot of urgent care stuff, and the chiropractic I've referred. And I actually got an honorary degree in that the school gave me, because I do a lot of defense work for
Next
them.
step, honorary dental degree.
Exactly. I want the dental degree to put on my wall by the other. And but we do that. We only defend cases. We don't take and so, but anyway, but we are very passionate, and we kind of have a little team thing. So the attorneys that just work for me, and we tend to get a little too personal. We get, too much about you can't lose. But anyway, but that's, so we're here in Houston. We do things all over Texas. So, but Sprott, Newsom, Quattlebaum, and Messenger. So.
All right. Fantastic. Well, guys, thank you again for joining us. It appears that you've wasted another hour of your life listening to the sound of my voice. So I want to thank you for supporting the Dear Doc podcast and all that we do. Now, you guys go out there and be safe. Michele, thank you for joining us today.
Sure.
And hope to see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Dear Doc podcast, your source for the business and legal questions associated with your dental practice. Don't forget to subscribe to the Dear Doc podcast on all major platforms.